Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a video for you of this little guy. This is the smartest dumb knife I have ever seen, the Reate Exo. Now, first off, before I go any further, I want to let you know that, well, my Patreon patrons are amazing. Their ongoing support makes it possible for me to see a knife like this, go, yeah, should pick one of those up and make a video about it without thinking too much about it. It is absolutely wonderful. I value them immensely, and I appreciate what they do every single day. Their support means the world to me. So thank you very much, Patreon patrons. I cannot overstate the gravity of my appreciation for you. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. This is the Spyderco PM2. Wearing a fancy set of pants at the moment from RG Custom Machine Works, but nonetheless, you see the size here. It's a big one, right? And in fact, it is a very big one. If we measure this guy up, we are looking at around 3.75 inches worth of blade length here. That's probably not the thing making this illegal in your local area, but it is still a thing that might make it illegal. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica, and here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And we're going to see here is yeah, this is a pretty big knife right here. Now, why am I making illegality jokes? What's that about? It looks just like a knife, right? Yeah, it is. But in practice, this has one big distinction from a lot of other knives. The way that this guy functions is this is a true gravity knife. If I open the handle, if I lift this part up, the blade falls back in. And if I open the handle again and orient it with the blade down, the blade falls back out and stays there. The only thing locking this knife open at the moment is the fact that this handle is down and prevents this little guy from sliding further back. And when I open that up, it falls back in and stays in there. And when it's closed, when the handle is closed, this guy is, well, not going anywhere. But this is a true gravity knife. The way that you deploy it is by pointing it downwards and opening the handle. Or, well, it works if you do the other ways too, right? But however order you want to do it in, that's how this deploys. And that makes this a true gravity knife. Gravity knife is a term that's been used a lot in the knife world, often as a part of prosecutorial overreach in certain jurisdictions, but at the same time, this is an absolutely true, honest-to-God gravity knife. And these haven't been made in production, at least on the higher end, for a long time. I know John Gray made some, I think a few years back, but maybe 2019-ish or so. But I just haven't seen production gravity knives out there, at least, like I said, on the higher-end enthusiast-grade thing for a while. And so that's actually kind of interesting. It's kind of different. The base specs on this guy, and by the way, this is not going to be a full review, partly because this is completely illegal for me to carry, and partly because it's completely impractical for me to carry, but I want to talk about it a little bit nonetheless. I'll talk about some of the things I like that make it very smart, some of the things that make it very dumb, and talk about why I'm still glad that it was made anyways. But the specs on this guy, this is a $275 knife, and by the way, this is much better at opening and closing when I'm not underneath a camera. The camera limits the ability that I have to lift this guy up, and so it is very easy to get out of there when you are when you're using it in any other position. But anyways, I digress. So this is $275, which I don't think is all that bad considering the precision, the fact it's half integral and whatnot. 3.75-inch LMAX blade. You can see right here, says LMAX, fine steel. And it is made actually quite nicely. And in fact, like I said, this is the smartest dumb thing, the dumbest smart thing I've seen in a long time. And it's smart because it is very nicely done. In terms of manufacture, it's pretty well made. The jimping, the knurling and such is great. This top part here is effectively an integral. This pivot here is not bearings as I assumed, but instead it's a phosphor bronze bushing sort of situation. This way of holding the blade in there is very effective. It works very well. Everything is very smooth, and because this is a bushing, you get exactly the amount of opening force here, and it just it works. Right? It falls open very, very readily, and it's easy to clean out and, maintain and all of that. It's a very, very well done knife. It also has a very nice smooth action, especially when you're able to hold it in the proper orientation and you're not underneath a camera. It is very, very well textured, which is nice. And particularly this area of micarta is brilliant because this is very easy to get a really good grip onto, right? This is not hard to keep a grip onto with your fingers, your thumb, most of your hand for that matter, which makes this all the easier to deploy. And then you just got to put your fingers down there on the bottom part, That's very, very nice. It has a very nice blade to it, right? It's a big old chunk of Elmax, that's for sure, but it comes down to a reasonably thin edge on both ends, which is nice. It has a reasonably nice grind. It is relatively sharp here. And I gotta say, relative to the price, relative to the materials, relative to the construction, price on this is absolutely good to go. It is also relatively intuitive, right? If you explain how this works to somebody, it's not so hard for people to figure out how it works, and it feels like, well, the fact is, this blade won't close as long as you're gripping on it. And so, in that level, it's actually, there's a level of safety here. And it really is that way, by the way. As I'm gripping this guy, it would be very, very hard to have this guy accidentally retract as I'm doing so. And if it did retract, remember, it's going backwards, right? Even if I somehow manage to get it open enough, it's going to slide in this way. And that's actually going to be hard because it's going to be forcing this part open as you do, but it's not ever going to be able to cut your fingers. As you're doing that, well, it's closing again. So, again, it's pretty intuitive that way, and then it is ridiculously fidget-friendly. This is not a thing that a lot of folks are interested in, but I know that for some folks they are, and this is very addictive to just do that kind of thing, too, because it is a very, very nice approach. It's well done. The action is smooth. It's good to go. It works well. And so, to me, all of those things are pretty smart, right? It's fidgeting, it's intuitive, it's reasonably priced, it's well-textured, a solid blade, a very nice action, and overall, I gotta say, it's well made. But it's also incredibly dumb, right? Because A, this is pretty liable to bite people who aren't expecting it, right? I don't generally, so my wife is a smart lady, and she knows her way around a bunch of pocket knives. I don't generally warn her about knives when I bring them into the house, but this one is one I did, where it's just like, this isn't going to act in the way you expect it to, and so be careful, right? And I think this is a thing that you do need to get used to. You need to treat it with some respect as you're first getting used to it, or you're liable to cut yourself open, because it's just going to drop open while your finger is right there, right? At Blade West 2021, I think, was when this was first released, or at least when it was first seen at a show, and I saw a number of people walking around with bandages, and in a couple of cases, I asked, hey, Reate Exo? Yeah, how'd you know? Good question. But anyways, so if you're not expecting it, if you're not used to how this works, it can be liable to bite you. It is also very, very illegal in a bunch of places, right? It's like they looked at a list of laws and said, yeah, let's break them all. There's even a double-edged version with a sharpened swedge on the top there, which is just like, yeah, twist the dagger, so to speak. Well, because then it is a dagger, so you can twist it, right? So that's a little bit of a problem. It's also not super carryable, right? Because there's no clip, which actually makes sense, because if this is clipped in your pocket and this comes open, then suddenly you have this sneaking its way out into your pocket, and is that a Reate Exo in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me and bleeding, is sort of not the good pickup line. So it wouldn't really carry well with a clip. What they do provide in the box is this leather sheath here with a belt loop on the back there, which you can definitely do, and it keeps the knife safe because it keeps this from opening, right? To be clear, if this is pinched shut, like you saw me do this in the disassembly, but if I take a cable tie here and I put it around here, there's no way this is able to open, right? This is completely safe at this point, right? There's nothing that it can do. And so this sheath works on the same principle, right? You put this on your belt, you stick the knife in there, and then as you're pulling it out, you safe, and then if you want, you can kind of jiggle it open, deploy the blade, and then grab, or you can, do that in a different way. But either way, it's this is a way you can carry it, but it's not as convenient, certainly, as pocket carry for a lot of folks out there. There is also approximately no subtle way to open this, right? I mean, you can open it up like that and then kind of like work it out, but that almost feels a little bit more dangerous, right? Or you can kind of pinch it slowly, but even still, I mean, the way you open this is just pop it open and let it drop on out of there. So this is going to be something that will send Edna in the lunchroom completely under the table, because she doesn't even have a term for why this is scary, right? Is that a Bella song? Like, no, Edna, but I appreciate your fear, or something, right? This is going to be, it's not subtle. And most importantly, and kind of the thing that's maybe most frustrating here, is that this thing has more rattle than a freaking maraca ensemble, right? Because in its natural state, when closed, there is some back and forth rattle of the handle itself. And the blade in there is rattling around as well. And once you deploy the blade, it's even worse, because this blade, unfortunately, although it is pretty well machined, there is a fair amount of, play to either side. This is not uncommon without the front automatic style knives, and so it doesn't shock me that it's here too. But there is blade play, vertical and horizontal here. the knife is safe. I want to be very clear about that. Because of the construction here, the knife is not falling apart. It's not the play that makes me wonder like, oh, this is bad, this is going to be a danger. No, it's not going to be dangerous, but it is very much play. And if you're used to really high-end knives that lock up like that, and you're not dealing, and that's, like I said, that's the case with almost every out the front, maybe the exception being like the Hawk Knives Deadlock here, which has special methods, and this isn't full automatic, by the way, rather than a gravity knife. But still, this is a very common thing for out the front style knives, but it's that's definitely a thing here too. And so as a result, this is not the most subtle thing. It's not the most quiet thing. And unfortunately, it's not the most solid feeling thing. It feels solid enough. It's not concerning in any particular way, but it is definitely a thing. So ultimately, it's really dumb because there's all this rattle. There's no subtle way to open it. It's not carryable without using a separate pouch. It looks like they just decided to break every law they could. They're just like speedrunning Knife Right's website here. And it's just liable to bite somebody who's not expecting it. So ultimately, like, this isn't the review because I can't carry it, both legally, because convenience-wise, and because otherwise. And by the way, if you just, do not just put this in your pocket. Like, no, absolutely not. But anyways, I can't carry it, and it doesn't do anything that a conventional folder can't do, right? It's big, but you can get other big folders out there in the world. This is not really something that offers something compellingly different in terms of function, right? And some folks, I'm sure, do carry it, and I'm sure they love it. And you know what? Good on them. That's wonderful. And I bet you're really having a lot of fun with it. And that is absolutely the truth. But for me, this is entirely dumb. And when it first came out, I'm filming this now in November of 2022, when this released in 2021. And for the longest time, I was like, God, that's dumb. I don't need to do a video about that. It's brilliant, but it's really dumb. But eventually, I realized that I actually very much appreciate it, right? Because when this guy came out, it actually did make a splash. It was interesting to a lot of folks because it was new and different. Like I said, Blade West 2021 is where I first heard about these, and I heard about them there a lot, both from people wearing fresh Band-Aids and from everybody else, right? And this was really telling because Blade West was a big show, right? There were a lot of people there showing off a lot of brand new things. Lots of folks dropped new flipper frame locks, liner locks, etc. Even some interesting new designs, but people were talking about the Exo. This was a thing that people were like, oh, dude, did you see the Exo? And you know what? That's cool. Because even if this is resoundingly dumb for me, and I think for a lot of people, it was a really smart release for them to make because it is so different. Right? Reate has a very real possibility of falling into the trap of people who make other people's cool knife designs really, really well. Right? But this differentiates them. It brings a little bit of life into their in-house brand, right? Because this is Reate, and it's designed by Reate. I mean, exoskeleton design, unless they got a guy named Exoskeleton working there. I think this is just one of theirs, right? But this is something that was very, very different. And it appears that they're selling well, considering that this guy was made in June of 2022, and it's serial number 325. Right? If they've made at least 300 of these guys, that's actually kind of impressive, right? They seem to be doing okay with these. But the main reason I decided ultimately that I want to make this video is that I think that's a really cool idea, right? Right now, so many companies are struggling to stand out and gain mindshare, right? You have people who, I feel bad for these folks, but they're starting new brands. There's a new brand, every 2 days or so happening in the knife world. And inevitably, and I'll talk to these folks, and they'll say, well, why aren't people buying any of our 45 different titanium frame locks and D2 liner locks? And, I feel for them, right? Because everything that you make is special to you. But the answer I always give is, well, do you remember the artist who did the paintings in the last hotel room you stayed in? Probably not, right? Because hotel art is not meant to stand out in that way. And a lot of what's coming out these days from brand new companies are knives that are relatively unremarkable. They're not doing anything so different. They're not doing anything so interesting, not doing anything so crazy. Or in worst cases, they have substantial flaws, right? But when you're making things that are kind of not standing out, they're not doing anything different, they're not controversial, they're not dumb or smart, they're just right down the middle, right? Then it's really hard to be remembered, But when companies do weird stuff like this, it stands out. The companies stand out. I mean, Reate already has a very solid reputation. Maybe not as solid as they think it is when they're deciding some of their pricing, but it's pretty solid, right? And We Knives actually had this early on with a knife like the We Knives Eschaton here. This is a completely ridiculous feat of machining that when they first did this, a lot of people, myself included, didn't get it because I just thought, oh, that's a bad knife. But in retrospect, oh wow, that's a really cool thing that they did there. Might not be a knife, but it's a cool thing, right? And even if this was a little bit dumb, by working with Elijah Isham and making this design actually happen, it was really smart because it put them on the map. And a lot of people suddenly realized, wow, those people can do something amazing. Artisan Cutlery had that weird automatic butterfly knife / tool thing, which was absolutely decidedly dumb, but it was smart for, that same reason. So if you are a small company who's trying desperately to get some mindshare, to get people to give a damn about you, I encourage you to dig deep and try something weird. Right? I don't know who was sitting around the table at Reate and said, well, let's make a good old-fashioned gravity knife. Like, I don't know what makes a person say that, but I'm really glad that whoever said that, right? Because that's really cool. Do something that somebody hasn't done yet, or perhaps hasn't done in a long time, right? Or do something that improves on the state of the art. Find a new way to do something, to improve a lock, to improve a design, to try something there. Do something that is art, that is crazy, different, and new, that shows makers and consumers why they should care about your company. What is so impressive about that stuff? Do those kinds of things, and you will stand out more. These are the kinds of things, as stupid as this is a kind of thing that excites consumers, that makes people go, whoa, did you hear about that? And that's wonderful, because that's the kind of thing that buys you brand reputation. Even people like me who are saying, wow, that's really dumb, but you know what? Good on you. That still does something. It still generates social media buzz, which is something that so many people are after and want me to try and artificially generate for them, which, dude, I can't. It's another D2 line of luck. I can't. I couldn't get a buzz out of this with a freaking bare power line. No, absolutely not. But nonetheless, this is the kind of weird thing that I want to see on my table. This is what I want to see existing. So for me, ultimately, my conclusion here is that the Reate Exo is incredibly and deeply dumb for me. I have zero interest in keeping this knife or carrying it, and it is pretty uniquely unreasonable for my life. Right? This is not a knife that I require. But if I zoom out a little bit from my own perspective, this is an incredibly smart knife, which shows the company's skill. It shows their ingenuity. It shows some innovation. And I think it was a brilliant move, both for knife buyers who now get the option. Because, look, there are going to be people out there who are like, oh, yes, this is perfect for my daily needs. And it's going to be really interesting for Reate because it's going to show people a whole new way of knife making that they can now think about as they're designing their own work or as they're sending work to Reate, right? So that's my conclusion. This is either the smartest dumb thing ever or the dumbest smart thing ever, and I really don't care which, but I do hope that more people follow suit. So good job, Reate. I really do want that to feel sincere, right? Like, this is amazing, this is dumb, but good job. I think it's really cool that they went for it, that they tried something different, and I think the end result is dumb as hell for me, but really interesting. I think it's going to be interesting for a lot more folks, and it's yet another good example of standing out by really rocking the boat and trying something different. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful Exia day. Bye now.